Welcome to QuickBooks Online Enhanced Reports Customization. This is being recorded on April 9th, but I assume that some of you will be watching the recording after the fact. Please take your time to answer the polling question. I would just love to know which version of QuickBooks Online you have, because it's really helpful to see how much time I should be spending on either the advanced features or the non-advanced features. It's really helpful, so take your time to answer that polling question right before we close it. The agenda for today. First, we're going to talk about what reports are available in QBO. I'm actually going to give you access to a cheat sheet, to a database that I created that helps me go back and recall what reports are available in which version of QBO. Very helpful as an accountant when my client asks me, hey, does my QuickBooks do a report like this or like that? And if I know which version they're in, I will know more or less whether or not they have access to that report. Then we're going to go right into customizing new reports, just creating reports in the new reporting interface, what they call the modernized reports. We're going to spend most of our time in modernized reports. If there's some questions about classic reports, we'll leave it for the Q&A at the end, but my focus is 100% on that. And then we're going to talk about the custom report builder, which is the built-in tool you have to create really highly customized reports, and that's only available in QuickBooks Online Advanced or Intuit Enterprise Suite. And then there's just a slide with a list of all the reports that are exclusive to Intuit Enterprise Suite, just so you know and you're aware in case you realize that the company you're working for needs that report and you're going to have to consider moving away from the QBO platform and into the Intuit Enterprise Suite platform. Perfect. So let's start with reports available in QuickBooks Online. And if you look into the slides, one of the most important pieces is there is going to be a modern view and there's going to be a classic view. Not all reports are available in classic view and modern view. Some reports are still only available in classic view. There's only a few left. And most reports are available in both right now in the middle of 2025. And at some point towards the end of the year, all the reports should be available only in modern view. So we're going through, this is a transition year in which a lot of the reports give you the option to go one way or the other. Now, if you click on the link on the slides, and as Gina mentioned, the slides will be shared with you at the end of the webinar. But if you are attending live, I'm going to paste the link because it's a Google Sheet. I pasted it in the chat, so you could just click in there. I pasted it a bunch of times, so it's easy for you to click and flood the chat a little bit with it. So you can click on that and you can see it, and then you basically get to see all the reports available, all of QuickBooks Online and Intuit Enterprise Suite. You see there's 149 reports in total. I'll zoom in a little bit more just for the benefit of the webinar folks. And then I'm starting to also make the change between having a link to the classic report, which is on this first column. So when you click on any of these, that takes you to the classic version. And then if you click on the enhanced experience version, that's going to be the modern version of that. Okay, so you'll be able to do that. So you're going to see a couple of columns here. You're going to see Ledger for QuickBooks Ledger, Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, Advanced, and IAS. And obviously, all those yeses mean that that particular report is available in that version of QuickBooks Online. So that's what that resource is. That resource is available to you. I pasted a link in the live chat, but also if you get a copy of the slides, the link should be in there. So we're going to talk about customizing reports, and I'm going to go through the slides really quick because we're going to do most of this inside QuickBooks Online. But you're going to notice that as you go slide by slide, there's a screenshot, and then there's a little arrow and an indicator of pretty much every button that's available when you customize reports. And the concept is that you can keep this for your own records. You can print it. This could be your cheat sheet. Okay, so every single one of the slides just has a little arrow pointing on what that means. And you're going to see that there's broken down into two areas. We're going to have the summary reports, And a good example of a summary report would be like a profit and loss, or a balance sheet, or balance by customer, or a accounts receivable aging summary. Those are custom reports, and those are summary reports. And then when we move over to the second piece, and we're going to do both examples, they're going to be the transaction detail reports, which are mostly common when you actually drill down into them, and the different options that you have, the different sections that you have are going to be different. So we're going to go in product, and we're going to showcase the entire workflow on customizing a report, both the summary reports and the detail reports. So we're going to start by clicking on the reports section on the left-hand side, and then we're going to go into standard reports. Now, if you happen to go to this screen a lot, one thing that I recommend is clicking on the little bookmark button right next to it. So once you click on the bookmark button, it adds it to the bookmarks, and then all of a sudden you're going to see that under bookmarks. So that could be a quick way. So you save that step of going into reports and standard reports. You can just click inside your new bookmark, standard reports, and it will take you there. So from here, there's essentially two ways to look through the reports. You can just come down here, scroll up and down, and find the report you're looking for. You can click on the drop-down menu and see all the reports are available, or you can start typing. So if I want to see a profit and loss, I just type the word profit, and then all the reports that contain the word profit will show up in there. So I'll click on profit and loss, and that will take me straight into the profit and loss report. In my QuickBooks file particularly, it's loading with the classic view. When QuickBooks first added the modern view, QuickBooks was forcing the modern view onto people, and based on mostly accountant feedback, at least through tax season, through April 15th, 2025, they reverted back to defaulting all the reports in classic view. However, this year, through the summer or so, that's gonna change, and you're gonna start everything in modern view, which is why this webinar we're gonna be focusing on learning the modern view. So we're gonna click on switch to modern view and go into the new platform, and we're gonna start with a profit and loss report. So the very first thing we see in the top left is your report period. Simply, you can click on the drop-down menu and pick what report period you want to see. So you do last year, this year, whatever you want to do, and you pick it in here. If any of the named periods are not good enough for you, you can select custom dates, and then you can basically just pick the date range that you want to pick. Now, I'll give you a quick pro tip. So for example, if you want to go straight to today's date, you put your cursor on the date and press T on the keyboard, and T would actually go to today's date. If you press M, it goes to the beginning of the month. If you press M a couple times, it will continue to cycle to the beginning of the month. If you press Y, it goes to the beginning of the year. And if you press Y a couple times, it cycles through the beginning of the year. If you press R, it goes to the end of the year, and it'll cycle a couple of times based on how many times you press R. And if you do H, it goes to the end of the month. The only thing you need to know really is T for today. That's kind of the trick. So T on the keyboard for today, and the word month and the word year. So M, the beginning of the month, H, end of the month, year, Y, the beginning of the year, and R, end of the year. So I'm just going to press Y to go to the beginning of the year last year, and I'll press Y, and then I'll press minus and plus to go up and one date, and that will be a custom way of selecting the date range that's for last year. Now, that could also work by just clicking on last year, of course, but this is just when you're looking for a very specific date range. So that's kind of the first step, is you want to pick the dates. Reports are very much date driven, so you got to have the right date in there. Then you get to pick whether it's cash or accrual. Essentially, that means that if it's accrual, anything that's an invoice or a bill will show in there as long as it's within the date range of the reports. But if you switch cash, invoices and bills only show if they're paid during the date range of the reports. I mean, there's a lot more complicated way to explain cash and accrual, but that's probably the best way and the easiest way to kind of soften the blow for the non-accountants to do that. Generally, for management, we're going to be running most of the reports in accrual, but there will be situations in which we want to see cash basis reports. View options gives you a couple things. We have the compact view, which is how you're seeing it now. And the normal view basically adds a little bit of spacing and a tiny, like a half a point bigger on the font size. So that's really up to you whether or not you want to do compact or normal. And then the other one is collapse all and expand all. So by default, we have expand all, which means that any categories like cost of goods sold, direct labor, or for example, we have expenses and car and truck expense, they start expanded. So if I manually click on any of those little arrows there, I can manually collapse any specific accounts with sub-accounts that I want to collapse, but that would be manual, and that's one by one. So if I go to view options and click on collapse all, it'll collapse everything for me. And then from there, you can pick what you want to expand. So let's say I want to leave income closed, but I want to expand cost of goods sold or expand expenses. And then I can pick and choose to only expand one particular one of these, maybe just wages or something like that. Okay, so that gives you a general idea for how powerful expand all and collapse all could be. Now there's a little almost hidden button here, which is to the left of total. That one allows you to do sorting, ascending, and descending. So if you click on it once, it will do descending. If you click on it once, twice, it will do descending. So when you look at expenses, for example, if you want to see the biggest number in the top, so the biggest expense in the top, which is how I personally like to do it, then I have to cycle through so the arrow's pointing down. If I click one more time and the arrow's pointing up, then it's going to do the lowest expenses in the top and then the lower and the highest expenses in the bottom. So like I said, I generally like to do descending, and I generally want to pick and choose which of the reports I want to expand. Now the next option here is called display. When I click on display, this is where I get to pick how I want to subdivide that report by columns. So when I click on that option there, I have a couple of options here. So I can subdivide by class, by customer, by employee, which is not really practical for income purposes, but mostly for payroll. By location, if you're using QuickBooks Online Plus or Advanced, you can use location and classes. By product and service, by date, or by vendor. Now the date one's a little bit tricky because it's actually date grouping. So when you go into transaction date, you can do multiple groupings. And kind of the most common thing that we're used to seeing is to see a quarterly P&L or a monthly P&L. So I'm going to click on month, and then all of a sudden I see a monthly P&L that again starts with everything collapsed because that's the setting that I have set up. Now when I start creating reports that have a lot of columns, I probably want to collapse that left navigation bar, collapse that, and I probably want to close that display drawer in the right. That way I have a little bit more real estate. It's a little bit more comfortable for me to look at the report. Another pro tip here is Control plus and Control minus. If you're in a Mac, it would be Command plus and Command minus. So when you do that, it will zoom in your browser. So you can basically zoom in as much as possible until you kind of have a comfortable look and feel, and data's not being truncated or being cut to the right or whatever. So this is where you do zoom in and zoom out until you get the optimal view that you want. Okay. So then once you decided exactly what you want to see in the report and how you want to see in the report, the next step will probably be either saving the template or printing it. So there's a couple options for the printing portion. So we can go to export to Excel. So if you want to manipulate something in the formatting and then print from Excel, you can do that. If you export as a CSV, that's mostly for the purposes of opening in Excel or Google Sheets, but it will be completely unformatted. So, and that's useful sometimes. I want to have a completely unformatted report. So I'll open that one up just to kind of show you. So you can see where it could be valuable, right, to have a more of a sort of flat, unformatted report. So basically all the data points are in there, but it's completely unformatted. Notice that all the font size is the same. There's no really no dollar signs. There's no bold, nothing that indicates a subtitle. Again, there are use cases where you want to see all the data flat like that, or basically unformatted. But if you export to Excel, you will have a file that has some formatting. It won't be identical to what you see on the screen, but it'll be very similar, right? Because you can't really mimic and make it exactly the same, but you'll be able to see it in Excel. And what's really cool is they come with the Excel grouping feature. So if you actually click, and this is very, very small, but if you see that 1, 2, 3 in there, that's the pre-grouping. So actually you can click on these and then create your expansions and you collapse. So for example, the first level grouping will collapse it just as we had it in collapse mode, as you can see here. The second level grouping, it will expand 1 layer, and the third layer grouping will expand 2 layers. So you get to also pick and choose by clicking on the grouping button there, which ones you want to collapse and expand while you're in Excel. So something else to consider when you're outputting the reports. And then finally, we can do print and save as a PDF. And then you get a little bit of a preview of what the report looks like prior to exporting. You can do portrait or landscape, of course. And it is also fit all columns in one page, which is actually really, really useful. That way, especially for a report like this, where you have 12 months, you might want to do that. They also has the option of smart page break, also to separate the categories, so you're not sort of in the middle of a grouping in one page. So it kind of is a little bit smarter when it comes to breaking it down, so it's easier to read when the report expands across multiple reports. Then from here, we can click on the print button and then open up our printer page, or we can save as a PDF and then save it somewhere in our computer, so then we can have it in the portable digital file format. Okay, so that's it. And then once you have a keen understanding of what this looks like in PDF, then you'll know what it looks like when you email it. So the other output option here is to email the report. So we click on email report, and then essentially it creates the PDF for you, or gives you the option to do Excel, CSV, or PDF format. And then you can even change the name, and you call it P&L 2024 by month. So the actual name of the file, the name of the PDF, can change to make it easier when you actually save it into a computer after it's been emailed or whatever, and then you put the person you're going to email this to, and you choose whether it's portrait or landscape, kind of the same options you see on the printing. On the printing options, you click send email, and then now the report has been sent via email, attached as a PDF, Excel, or CSV, based on basically what you wanted to do. In here, the other things that are worth mentioning is when you actually save the report, you can either save it into one of the custom report groupings, or you can add it into management reports. So we're actually not going to go too deep into management reports today, but we'll talk about saving it in the report groupings. So when we go here where it says save, I'm going to click on the drop down menu, click save as, and we'll try this again, save as, and then I'll call it profit and loss last year by month. And I can save this and not put it in a group. Okay, so I could just simply click on save, and it's not in a group, it's just sitting there in my custom reports. Or I can move it to a group by clicking add to group, and then I can select what group I want to put it in. Or when I saved it in the first place, so there's actually 2 pathways to save into group, I would pick that add to group option in there. So then we click on save. So now the report is officially in my grouped custom reports. Now I'm going to take a break from customizing really quick to just go back to the custom reports page. So I'm going to go into custom reports, and then any report that I have ever saved as custom will be listed here. You will notice that some have the word custom in it and some do not. What that really means is the word custom, it means it was customized through the modern reports interface, and the ones that don't say the word custom, they're still custom reports, but they weren't created through the custom reports interface. That's kind of the difference. And then when you have them in groupings, and I'm not sure why the groupings are not showing here, but if you actually go look at this one, profit and loss by month, I can actually from here add to a group. I don't know why it wasn't in the group in the first place. Let me save that. Okay, there it is. So now I have my grouping here called Hector's group, and then every report that's ever been saved in my group can now be run sort of in batch. So as I have more than one in a group, I can come up here to the little caret here, and I can click on export as PDF, and what it will do is it will create a single PDF in a single file with every one of my custom reports that have been added into that group. So it's really powerful option. So you can have one big PDF that contains all the data that you want, right? Whether it's detail or summary, it could be a combination. So a lot of people are creating report groupings, report packs using this option. Unfortunately, you can't email them as a group. You still have to email them individually. So that's still kind of a limitation that we have. But in here, you can also schedule them individually to be emailed to users. So if I want to do this profit and loss by month, and I want every month for someone to get that report, I click on create schedule, and then I will put here that to start on, let's say, May 15th at 9 a.m. and I'm going to repeat every month. And I can say until the end of the year or maybe never. And then I put here who's going to get the report automatically. And then I can put your monthly P&L. And then I can put here, here's your report about last 12 months of P&L by month or something like that, right? Whatever you want to put in there. You put that in there and then you click on save and turn on, and then it creates a schedule. So that particular report is now set up to automatically be scheduled. And then from here, you could also change the group. So if you put it in the wrong group, you can add it to a different group or remove it from the group altogether and have it not be in a group. So that would be individually at the report level. You can also add the management reports, which we said we're not going to cover. And then you can also run the report in Spreadsheet Sync, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Delete the report, and of course, share the report, which allows you to either make a report that make the report available to all users of QuickBooks, or keep as a report that only you can view in QuickBooks. Unfortunately, you can't pick and choose which employees or which team members have access to the report. It's either you only or everyone that has access to the report. So that could be an option for you if you want to share it within the QuickBooks users. All right, cool. I'm going to go back to standard reports. I'm going to go back and pull the profit and loss one more time. I'm going to switch to modern view. So I'm just going to restore back to where we were before. I'm going to talk about a couple more things. The last year here, and we'll go to display. I'm going to switch this to quarterly. Okay, just so we have a little bit less information in there. And then we're going to go on to compare. So compare is really powerful when you want to either compare to another period or you want to sort of compare within itself. So there's a couple of valuable things that we can look at here. So for example, if we do percentage of income, one of the most common comparative variance reports that we do, which is we kind of want to see, and let me just go back for a second. I moved too fast. I'll just pull it up from the custom reports. That would be faster. Okay, we'll switch this back to quarter. And then we'll go back to compare, and then we'll do percentage of income. Okay, so what we get to see here is, of course, my income for quarter one is 100% of income, right? That makes total sense. And then my cost of goods sold is 45% of income, and my gross profit is 54% of income. So if you want to see margins, profit, that sort of thing, that's very, very useful. And this is a collapse report. So if I were to expand it, then I can see individually that in the first quarter, let me sort this by, we'll sort it by descending. And so as we can see here, is my car and truck expenses were 2.75% of income that quarter. Or if I take a look at my insurance, was 4.53% of income that quarter. Or if I look at my payroll, it was 4.02% of income in that quarter. Or you can skip to quarter four, and then we can see that that we have it looks like much higher margins, so 82%. And then we could go down and look at any particular number, like our wages were 9.64% of income on that quarter. Now, if that's too confusing, we can just remove the quarters in this case, and then we go back to no quarters here, and then we can just take a look at the percentage of income here, and just look at it for one specific period. So it looks like our insurance is 2.45% for the whole year of our income. So that's the comparison period, the percentage of income. Another one that's really, really cool, it's really interesting, is percentage of row. A lot of people don't use this one. I would venture to say that maybe less than 1% or 1% even take a look at that. But what I find is interesting is if you are using a comparison, let's do it again, like a quarterly comparison or maybe a class comparison, you get to do a cross section of the report and analyze the percentage that it represents of the whole amount. So, for example, if I do a P&L by class, and we have here, and let me remove this one for now. Okay, so I'm going to start with a P&L by class, where you get to see my income by each of the classes in the company. Okay, so it's all in there. It's by class, and let's just focus on income at the moment. Okay, and then I do percentage of row, and then all of a sudden I get to see what percentage of income that class represents across the whole company, right? So, for example, my chandeliers are, in this case, 15% of the income of the business, and my exterior is 13% of the income of the business. And I have quite a bit that hasn't been specified, which is another challenge here, right? When you're looking at analysis, you have to make sure that everything has a category, a class, a location, whatever it happens to be. Then ceiling mounts is 16% of the whole company for the whole period. So I love that. And filters work really well, especially if you want to remove certain data from the report. So, for example, I'm going to go to account type here, and I only want to see income, right? So then instead of having everything in the P&L, I'm just going to put income here. That way I don't confuse the user by showing them all sorts of information they don't need to see. And then I get to expand income, and then I can do maybe even more of a deeper analysis by looking at all the sub accounts. Okay, maybe that wasn't a great example. Let's do cost of goods sold instead, and remove income. And then we get to see only cost of goods sold. So we can expand it, and then we can see by category what percentage, in this case, what percentage of the row. But if I go back into comparison and I don't do percentage of row, and I do, in this case, percentage of in this case, I'm gonna do percentage of expense, but I'm gonna do it based on only showing expenses. So that actually will be a lot easier. So let's filter and only show expenses at this point. Let's do expenses. Remove cost of goods sold. So this will be pretty interesting. So now I get to see what percentage of it, not percentage of income, but percentage of expenses any of these represent. So if you look at in the chandelier class, 15% of my expenses are current truck expenses. And then in the wall mounts class, 45% of my expenses are current truck expenses. If the analysis is way too deep, we can just remove the classes and then just take a look at, again, expenses compared to themselves, right? We're not comparing it to income, we're comparing it to expenses. That also adds a little bit of flavor. And to add even more to that, I want to clear the filter and just do a regular P&L where it's percentage of expense. So you can see here that our income is 495% of an expense. That means that for every dollar we spend, we make or we sell almost $5. So that could also be part of your analysis where you're trying to figure out, based on comparisons, what these numbers mean or what these numbers could mean. So I'll remove that, and I'm gonna talk about formatting, and then I'm gonna go into the detailed reports. So I'm gonna start with expanded view. And by default, QuickBooks tends to only show accounts that have activity in it. If you go into general options, you have a couple of options here that you can change. So number one is if you have really large numbers like billions or whatever, you can divide everything by 1,000 and then basically see a lot smaller numbers. We get to see that more often in Fortune 500 companies. Also, if If there's zeros, if there's any zeros, like for example, we see employee bonus is a zero, sick holiday is a zero, mileage is a zero, and you don't want to see the zero. I like to see a zero, different issue altogether, but you can click on right here. It says don't show zero amounts, and then it'll blank out the zero. It doesn't hide the line, it blanks out the zero. So it's really up to you. Do you want to do that? Also negatives, if you want to show them with a parentheses, or you want to show them in red, that's an option too. Okay, so if you want to show them in red, I like to show them in red. I think they provide a little bit more value when you show the negatives in red. And then here it says show non-zero or active. This is where you get to choose whether or not you actually want to see those zero lines in there at all. So it's actually up to you if you want to see it or not. So if you click on show rows, right now it says active. That means that there has been some activity in there. And if I click on all, it might show it will show every single account in your chart of accounts. So that could be a little bit painful if there's accounts that you have never used before. You're going to see a whole bunch of zero spaces in there. Do you want that or not? Again, I can make a case to when we need that, and I can make a case when we don't need that. But then you can go the complete opposite and do non-zero, which means that as long as the end result is zero, do not show that. The only exception to the rule is going to be the subtotal, because the subtotals has to be there. You can't kill the parent account in the report. So the subtotals of a parent account that has sub-accounts, that's still going to show there because you still need that header up there. But anything that's in the detail level, that disappears. Again, if I go back to all, we're going to see a lot of zeros. If I go to active, we're going to see some zeros. For example, this employee bonus and sick holiday pay, it shows a zero, but it's still showing because there could have been a transaction in there, and there could have been a accompanying journal entry that was reversing the transaction. So even though the net is zero, there are transactions during the period, and that's exactly what that means. But again, if you don't want to see zeros, just click on non-zero for columns or rows, depending on how you're looking at the report, and you can hide all of that. Then under header, you can just add the company logo, name, report period. That's really up to you. And the footer, you can add date prepared, time prepared, report basis, cash or accrual, and then align it. Now, the only thing we didn't mention here is notes. Notes was actually recently added, which is really, really neat. So if you want to add some notes here to the bottom of this report, you click on more actions, and you click on add note, and then you can add any notes there you want. Some accountants literally copy and paste this P&L and go to ChatGPT and say, hey, could you give me a template for some notes I can add in a report, and limit it to 4,000 characters. You could always do that, right? Copy and paste that in ChatGPT, paste it back. But you can put something, this is temporary. We are waiting for the docs for the warehouse purchase, or something like that, right? So let's say we're waiting for a big transaction that we haven't entered, and we want to kind of add that note in there. So then when you go print this or save it as a PDF, the report in the bottom will have its notes. So you can add those notes. And if you save the report, if you have it customized, the reports will stay there. Okay. And a lot of people are asking in the chat, when will the classic reports go away? I actually don't know. It's actually not public information. QuickBooks is going through the transition of making sure that the new modern reports has everything that people need. And then once they're pretty sure that there's no more feedback being given to people, that it's safe. Let's say just call it. It's safe to get rid of the classic reports. In my personal opinion, I didn't like the modern reports at first, mostly because it was missing features. But now I believe that it's not just complete and there's full feature parity for the most part. I actually think that that this is actually friendlier, quicker, easier to work with, and that sort of thing. Okay, we have a question here that says, what does the option of show non-zero on columns mean? Okay, that's a pretty good question. And I'm going to go to display and change this to classes. Okay, and you could have a particular class that nets as a zero. Okay, so this is not a good example because there's at least $120 amount there, but let me just bring this up and I'll just try to hunt down for a one that would be a good representation. Okay, so it looks like all of them have that. So let me try moving it like this. I'm gonna just pick a date range in which I would have a column that would be empty. Okay, great example. So we have, well, maybe not, but I won't spend any more time on that. But let's say, for example, you have a column here that everything, again, down the line, everything amounts to zero at the end. So if something like that were to exist, where there is one that would have that, okay, you would have a zero at the end, then you would go into general options and go into footer and then do a non-zero, because that will disappear that column. Whereas if I go to all of my classes, okay, it's a good example, all of my classes show in the report, even if they net out to zero. So the idea is that you don't see a lot of extra columns there that you don't want, and that's what the non-zero means for the column option. Okay, cool. All right, so that's I think we've covered pretty much everything that there is to know on summary reports. So now we're gonna go into detail report. So I'm gonna go back here and do last year. And again, that will work almost the same for a balance sheet or other summary reports. Detail reports are reports that contain actual transactions. So I'm gonna click on any of these. I'll click on this $95,000 that's in here. I'll click on that, and that's gonna drill down into a, let me refresh that because that's, it's loading a little bit weird. But that will drill down into a detail report, and the detail report, in this specific case, it should be on the new modern view. Just go back for a second and run this again because my internet is being a little bit slow. Let me do a P&L again. And I'll drill down to any of these. Let's say I'll drill down right there on revenue. So now I'm in a transaction detail report. And as I mentioned earlier, we have in the slides the cheat sheet that kind of points out what everything means in here, but we're gonna do the full demo. Just make sure that you have that cheat sheet at your disposal. I'm doing a little bit of side scrolling because of the amount of columns that are available. So this would be a good place to collapse the left navigation bar. That way it gives me a little bit more information. No more side scrolling. I gotta be careful with side scrolling sometimes because in a Mac, when you side scroll, it might detect it as a back or forward, right? So I gotta be very careful with the side scrolling. Let me go into a detail report again. Give me a second. Let me go. I'll pull a detail report. Let me do transaction detail list by account. That's probably one of the most common detail reports. So we have a lot of columns here, and we do have a little bit of side scrolling happening. So because we have a lot of data, so that's when you get to choose what columns I want to see. So what data points do I want to see in this report? So after I pick the date range and whether it's cash or accrual, or whether I want normal view, compact view, or I want to collapse, or I want to expand, right? So once I go through all that, I can then choose the number of the columns that I want to see. So I'm going to click on columns here in the top. Okay, and then you're going to see right here where it says reorder, you're going to see the ones that are defaulted on. So let's say, for example, I don't want to see location and class. Let's say these two things don't matter to me. So I'm just going to go in here and uncheck class and uncheck location, so that it gets rid of those columns. Let's say I also want to change the order. Let's say that for me, the item split account it needs to go first, and the description needs to go second. So all I have to do is click and drag and bring that up and change the order. So now it's in this order: transaction type, number, name, split account full name, line description, and then we have the amount at the end. Okay. And then if I want to add anything else to that, so if I want to add, let's say, I want to separate debits and credits. So I'm going to click credit and then debit. So I added 2 more columns here, debit and credit. I can come back up here and say, you know what? I don't want balance and I don't want category or product service amount. I just want to see the debit and the credit. And then I can see this in debit and credit mode. So you get to pick and choose what data you want to see and what kind of columns you want to see. And again, it's under this reorder column. This option here called more columns, that's only available in the advanced version of QuickBooks Online. And I'm actually going to go into that pretty soon. Then you're going to have another option here called pivot. That's only available in the advanced version of QuickBooks Online. And then we have the chart view, only available in the advanced version of QuickBooks Online. Again, we're going to get into that in a little bit. So once we pick the columns that we want to see and the order, there's a couple other things we can do, which is going into filters. So filters, you pretty much get to choose which data you want to see. So let's say, for example, I only want to see invoices, just for the lack of a better term. So I'm going to go into filters, and then I'm going to look for transaction type. Then I click on transaction type, and then keep in mind, you can only filter columns that are showing. So if the column is not showing, you can't filter by that. So that's a really, really important. Okay. So we're going to do transaction type, and then we're going to go into select, and then we're going to just type invoice. Okay. So essentially, this will only show me invoices. Now, I don't know how I started the report. Let me just do all dates, see if they show up. Okay, there we go. So these are all my invoices. Okay. I can go into group, and I can pick any way I want to group them. Right now, they're grouped by account. So they have this kind of strange way of being grouped. So I'm actually going to clear the grouping altogether. And I'm just seeing basically a flat report that contains a whole bunch of invoices. The next thing I can do is what side of the account I want to see. So if I want to see something where it's only showing me the income side, for example. So I'm going to go into filter, and then I'm going to add a condition, and I'm going to go to, let's say, let me go down and, okay, there we go. So you see how it says item split account full name. So I only want to see, let's say, the item split that says accounts receivable. That way I only see one side of the transaction. Right now, you see both the debit and the credit side, because by default, it's going to show you everything. Typically, when you look at an invoice report, and you have to know a little bit of accounting for this. When you look at an invoice report, depending on what you're trying to look at, you might want to see the details inside of an invoice, or maybe you want to see just the overall invoice value. So if you're looking at overall invoice value, then maybe you're focused on these debit sides. But if you want to see the individual line item details in the report, then you focus on the credit side. So the easiest thing to kind of see is to spot the pattern in terms of distribution account and item split account. So I'm going to go to item split account if it's there. Sometimes it's not there, so it's only by distribution type. So I'm going to go into distribution account here, and I'm going to go into not equals. In this case, we're going to do accounts receivable. Okay, that way I only see the sort of the detail side of the income account, right? So this is all the detail side of the income account. Then I can add one more layer to this, which is like I can add a column for our item or our category, product or service. So let's look for our category, product or service. It should be here, product full service name. And now we get to see that information that's in here. This is the item, so to speak, that is inside of the report. I could change the order and bring this up maybe. Bring it up here. Okay, so now we have a little bit of an order that makes a little bit more sense. And then I can group it by that item. So I can go to group by and pick the item. So that's the product or service. Okay, and then I can go into view options and collapse all. And then I have basically a sales report by item. Let me collapse here. So this is a sales report by item. So these are all my sales for all dates for the item. I can maybe narrow this down to, let's say, just last year. Let's go here. Where's my last year? Okay, so that will give me a little bit less information, and then I can drill down any of these. So I can expand any of these and then see all the transactions associated with that. Okay, in grouping, I can also, and I'm going to add this little caveat. In the advanced edition of QuickBooks Online, you can do multiple layers of groupings. In Plus and below, you can only do one grouping. So that's it. So we're essentially stuck with one grouping if you're in Plus or below. But if you're in Advanced, you can do multiple groupings. So I can add a subgroup in this case, or I can start with, let's say, by customer. So we'll do a customer here, and then I can add a subgrouping for the item. So that's a product or service. So again, one layer of grouping, all versions of QuickBooks Online can do that. The multiple subgrouping up to 3 layers, only QuickBooks Online Advanced can do that. So it's all grouped by customer. I expand on one customer, and then now it's broken down by item, and then I can expand on the item, and then I can see that. Okay, and if there's a class, let's just go here to columns, and let's look for my class. So class full name. And then I can go one more layer grouping. I could probably go add a subgroup and do class. Okay? And then when I look at any of these, I have it expanded by one item and then by the class. You see that? That's pretty cool. Or I can change the order, and then I can do class first, and then I can do the product and service afterwards. So it's really, really awesome. This is what you can do with this report. So I got customer first, I got class second, and then I got the item. So again, single grouping available in all versions of QuickBooks Online. Multiple grouping up to 3 available in the advanced version of QuickBooks Online only. Okay, cool. Okay, so those are essentially the fundamentals of a detail report. I want to kind of show you one more thing. It's one little trick up my sleeve. I'm actually going to start over and run a transaction detail report again. So I'm going to go transaction detail report. So the transaction detail by account. And let's say, for example, I want a report of all the invoices that have been paid. Okay. So first thing I want to do is I want to go into filter, and I want to do a transaction type. So where are you? Transaction type. And then I'm going to do invoices only. Okay. So that should show you. And if I go to, let's say, I'm going to pick a specific date range, and I'm going to pick, let's say, December. So I'm just going to go into December 1st through December 31st of last year. And okay, that's all my invoices are there. And right now it's under accrual. Now under accrual, very important, under accrual is going to show me all the invoices that have been paid and that have not been paid. Basically both things. Instead of seeing all the details, I'm really just I only want to see the invoices only. So I don't want to go in and see all the detailed line items of every single invoice. I just want to see the invoice only. So there's a couple approaches to do it, but really the simplest way is to filter by account. So in this case, we can go to add condition, and then we can go to account. We'll do distribution account type and choose accounts receivable only. Okay, then that will only show you essentially the whole invoice, not the details inside the invoice, but the whole invoice. Now you can't tell if this invoice has been paid or not. Now there are some columns we can work with. There's one called AR paid. So if I click on the little checkbox for AR paid, and I'm going to get rid of some that maybe I'm not tracking. So class, location, maybe item split, and let's get rid of balance too. Okay, so that would be good enough. So now we have all of our invoices, and then some show paid and some show unpaid. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is an absolute value. So have these been paid ever, right? That's really what this does. This doesn't specifically talk about when they're paid, Now I can group these. So if I go to group these by AR. Let's go to AR paid, if it allows me to. Sometimes it's hard to know which one allows you to group. So this one won't allow me to group by AR paid, unfortunately. But I can sort by AR paid, and then maybe I can split this up manually. But if I haven't sorted, I could then later on in Excel or something figure out how much of these are paid and some of these are unpaid. Unfortunately, for some strange quirky reason, it doesn't let me group by whether they're paid or not. But anyway, so these are all the invoices that were written during December. So that's 64,000, from which 3 of them have been paid at some point in time, and the rest of them have never been paid. Now, that is not the same thing as if the invoices were paid during the month of December. If you actually want to know that, you would have to change this to cash basis, and then it will tell you if they've been paid during the month of December. Now, unfortunately, and this is kind of the tricky part, is when you run a cash basis report, you cannot filter by accounts receivable. It's just one of those quirky things. You're actually going to have to filter, look at all the line level details on the report. So typically, the way I like to group these is I group these by customer. It's typically the cleanest way to do it. So then I'm going to collapse them all. So then I get to see all of my invoices that were paid during the month of December. That's why it's cash basis. And they're grouped by customer or project. And I can expand any of these and see all the details of that. And just keep in mind that not everything can be grouped. Just I don't have a way of telling you. I know for a fact these fields do and these don't. It's just a matter of sort of playing with it and discovering it. But it's again just a part of the process. Okay, cool. I'm going to go through the questions really quick, and I'm going to also go in the slides to make sure I didn't miss anything in the process. And we're going to talk about the last piece here, which is the custom report builder. Okay, perfect. Okay, good. So let's go into custom report builder. One of my favorite things to showcase, because it is, in my opinion, what makes QuickBooks Online Advanced really, really, really worth it. And it's probably the most powerful thing that QuickBooks Online Advanced has. And I think that at the price range of QuickBooks Online Advanced, which is at $235 a month, I don't think there's any other software out there that's comparable with how powerful this is on the reporting side. So let's go ahead and open up QuickBooks Online. And I'm going to go back into the reports. And the custom report builder is it's built based on the modern reports platform. So everything should be familiar in terms of the building and the construction of the reports. But many times it requires you to sort of start from scratch. There are some templates that they give you. So for example, if you go to custom report builder, again, only available in QuickBooks Online Advanced or in Intuit Enterprise Suite. And you have 4 templates here. You have product item profitability by customer, revenue recognition, bill approval status, invoice approval status. So don't be bummed out that there's only 4. At the end of the day, almost every report that you're going to see here is basically a custom report builder template. I mean, in essence, that's what it is. But from the context of just building custom reports, we're going to click on Create New Report. That's kind of the first start. And then it gives you a couple of options. One, it can say, let's start with blank, or we can start with a template. And I have a little bit of a caveat to say with this. I found that some of these templates actually start so limited that it's very difficult to add things to it. So I actually like starting with blank. But I don't want to discourage you from starting your process of testing this with the template. So I'm going to go into bills. And very simply, we'll start with there. And then we click on Create. And then the custom report builder will create a report with just bills. Let me do all dates here. So these are all the bills that are in QuickBooks, and these are all the columns that they added there by default. So they added date, bill number, vendor, due date, account name, amount, open balance, and page status. That's what they added by default. Now, this first list of reorder, these are your default columns. But then when you click on more columns, and this is kind of the meat and potatoes of QuickBooks Online Advanced, that's where you can add any sort of line item or column that you want to add to do your analysis. So, for example, we have our a list of all of our bills, right? So that was kind of like the starting point. Let's say I want to see the line items of each of those bills. So I'm going to click on line items, and then I'm going to pick here where it says under line items, there's attributes. I'm going to pick, I click on here and show more, and then I get to see all of the line item data that will go into one of these reports. So, and this stuff is going to get a little bit confusing pretty soon. So I'm actually going to right click on one of these and then click on open in a new tab or open in a new window really quick. Let me look for a bigger amount. Let's look at this one. So open in a new tab. And then what you get to see in this case is the bill with a whole bunch of details. It's actually a perfect example. So it's a report that has a whole bunch of details. So we have descriptions, we have products and services, we have quantities, we have amounts, we have classes. Where in this report, we're not seeing any of those details. We're just seeing the overall amount. And that's kind of the challenge that I have, a little bit of the challenge that I have with the pre-built reports, that it's not 100% obvious how to get those details. But one of the ways to get those details is to ask it to show me the product and service. So I'm going to go into, let's go into here. Let's go up here for a second and just go back to line item. And here under, where are you? There's my linked attributes. That's where it gets a little bit confusing. I don't see the line items in here anywhere. So that means that I may not be able to do it from this pre-built report. Okay, let me go to line items. Let's see if I bring in the product and service name. Let me type here, product and product. Okay, it's only amounts. So let's see if I get the product and service name in here. There's the amount. I don't get to see the name. So I'm gonna do the exact same example, but I'm not gonna start from the template because oh, actually, let me try again. Let me try the word item. See if maybe with the word item it shows up. Yeah. So it's one of the quirky things about it is that I'm trying to get the actual item and the product and service name, and it doesn't show in here. It's because I started with that template. So I'm gonna go back to standard reports, exit without saving, and go into custom create new report. I'm gonna show you how I think the best way to start a report from scratch is. So we're gonna go to blank. And then even though you will be tempted to start with a bill, you would say, you know what, it makes sense for us to go into expenses and start with bill. Just keep in mind that some of those detail line items don't show by default. So we're actually going to go into transaction. And we're going to start with transactions, believe it or not, because transactions will encompass both bills and invoices. Actually, will encompass everything. And that would allow us to look at the line item details. So I'm going to go date, transaction type, and then we're going to go into name in this case. And then we're going to start with the filter. And then we go to transaction type and only show bills. So it's a little bit of a different approach. Let's do all dates. So that gets us back to exactly where we were. But now when I go into line items, again, for some reason, you would have to go through this route to see the product and service. So where's my product and service? Let's do product. Okay, we got the product and service. So we got category, product and service, the sales price, or let's just do the amount. And let's do our category, product, service, invoice. No, not that one. Let's go through product and service right here. And then we got product and service name. Okay, there it is. It's under linked attribute, product and service. So there's my product and services. Then I can go one step further and I can go into filter and I can go into add a condition and I can do product and service and then do not empty. That way it only shows me bills that contain a product and service. To give you a good idea how this starts being constructed. Go back into columns, go to reorder, and then change the dollar amount to put that towards the end. Normally, that's kind of how we look at reports. Then I go back into more columns, and I can go into line items, and then we're gonna look for class. So let's go into class. There's my linked attribute class. So if there's a class being used, there it is. And then I can start grouping things the way I want to, right? So I can do group by, in this case, class. As a second layer, I can group by the product and service. And then maybe as a third layer, I can group that by vendor, okay? And then we actually get to see a pretty interesting breakdown of our reports that showed me all of my purchases, or whatever it's on a bill in this case, right? Because the filter shows bills only and only shows transactions that contain products and services, and they're grouped by classes first. So then I can open and discover bath and quantity, and then I can see all the items that are being purchased through those in that class category, and I can expand and I can see the vendor or the payee. Or I can go the other route where I can put the name of the vendor up here, and then I can put the product and services second, right? And then I can expand and I can see in which context this is being used. I can even go one step further and see compare when they're being bought versus when they're being sold. So we can go back into filters here, and then on transaction type, we'll do both invoices and bills. So we got both bills and invoices. And then under grouping, let's say we'll get rid of class, and then we'll do product and service. And then the second layer is the transaction type. So as I see this product 3261, I can expand upon it, and I can see, okay, it was invoiced 86 times, it was in a bill 3 times, and I can expand it and actually kind of see it. Or I can go one step further and do one more subgroup for the name, and I can see all these. I can expand them. Oh, okay. The name kind of broke it for some reason. So we'll expand here, and we get to see, and we'll let's get rid of class here too. Let's say we don't need classes anymore. Okay, so we have the item, whether it's been in a bill or an invoice, and then you can expand upon it. Let me try one more time, see if adding the name will work to the grouping. So let's go grouping, let's add the name. Okay, that seems like that's working. Okay, so there it is. Okay, and then there is in this case by the customer, and in this case by the vendor. So really, really powerful stuff. I mean, you actually start building reports that way. You really, really start getting a much more keen understanding of your data. Okay, let's do, I'm gonna do just 1 month here. So let's do 12/01/2024 through 12/31/2024. Okay, so now we have kind of the same report in there, and I'm going to just do a pivot table this time around. So that's going to be kind of interesting. So I'm going to click on pivot up here. I'm going to click on pivot, and then let's say for the rows, it's going to be the name. So this is going to be like the vendor or the customer. And then under columns, it would be the product or service. And then the values would be the total dollar amount. So then all of a sudden I get to see how these are organized. So these are the product numbers, and these are my vendors or my customers that I'm either selling or buying from. I'm going to take it one step further here, and let's just only do bills for now. So let's just take away the sales portion and just do the bills. So it'll be a little bit easier to see. So then this is all my vendors, and then which part numbers I'm buying by vendor. So it's pretty neat, and I can flip these on the pivot table. I can put let's see, can I do that? Can I put the name on the top? Let me see. Can I put the product and services in the top, and then the name on? Yeah, there you go. So I could also go by product, and then I can see how much, in this case, is total dollar value, how much I'm buying from each vendor. Now, if I'm going to turn off the pivot table for a second, go back into columns, and then I'm going to look for quantity. Let's see if we can find quantity. Let's type the word quantity. Sometimes it's abbreviated, sometimes it's not. Let's go back to product. Let's see if we can find it. So let's see if the quantity is in here. Oh, the quantity is not here, interestingly enough. So I was able to pull the amount, but not the quantity. And I might be missing something here, where maybe I'm missing something in the, okay, there's a quantity. There's a quantity, and there's the quantity is in there. Let's see if this is going to work. Let's do, okay, so that's working. So we'll bring the quantity over, and so that works with the quantity. And then that's when we do a pivot. Then in this case, instead of doing the amounts, I'll bring the quantity, and then we get to see in this case how many units of that product or service is being purchased by a vendor. So you get a lot of quality of data potentially here. And then kind of once you master the pivot table, once you're very comfortable with what's a row, what's a column, and what value is going to be summarized or added at the end, then you can switch over to chart view. And then for the chart view, you can do all sorts of interesting things. So I can do, let's say, the product or service here. And then I can do, is the quantity available here? Yes, it is. So there's my quantity. That's not working on this one. Let's see if we do, let's do it by amount then. So in this case, these are all my purchases per item in a graph view. Okay, and I have multiple options. I have a stacked bar, I have a trending line, which only really makes sense when you do dates, but that could be an option. So instead of product and services, I could just go by date, and I can do, let's say, by week, and then I can see how many total units are being purchased across the items. In this case, I can split by product and service. So then we can do a trend line, and then we can see how the units are being purchased over time, right? So kind of a flat piece of data. But if I do a whole year's worth, and then maybe do per month, then you get a lot more richness of data. You get to see trends on every one of these items. How they're being purchased over time. So the chart view is also really interesting from that sense. And you can save the chart view. It's saved. We can call it sales by, purchases, right? So purchases by product by month or something like that. Okay, and then you have your chart is saved, and at that point you can add it to your performance center, which is really cool. So when you click on add to performance center, okay, and then you go back into reports and you go to the performance center, you get to see your new custom graph that you build, your custom chart that you build with Custom Report Builder. Again, only QuickBooks Online Advanced. You get to see it right there in your performance center, and you can delete it, you can export it if you want to see what that looks like in sort of a graphic format. You can add it to your management reports. If you click on edit widget, it basically sends you back to editing that custom chart that you created, and it's all stemming from the same exercise where you sort of started by building the report from scratch, and then you chose whether or not you wanted to pivot, and then you chose whether or not you wanted to make a chart. So they did a really good job at integrating everything on one interface. So you're not building a graph using some other system. You're building it based on the exact same system that you would use to build a custom report or to build a custom chart. Okay. I think I covered most of what needed to be covered in this. Of course, going down the rabbit hole of building custom reports could take a very long time. Just make sure you go through the slides, and so you know exactly what every one of these buttons do, so you can test it for yourself. Okay. All right. The last thing I'll cover, we got about 10 minutes left, is Spreadsheet Sync. So I'm going to go back into QuickBooks Online, and then I want to add one more thing. In the slides, there's a link to about a 20-minute video I did where I walk through how to use Spreadsheet Sync in detail. Right? Unfortunately, I prefer to go deeper into Custom Report Builder versus Spreadsheet Sync. So to me, it was better to just kind of like expand the webinar by having the pre-recorded video for you. And I only recorded it like 4 days ago. So definitely go back into the slides and look at that video if you want to go a little bit deeper into Spreadsheet Sync. But I'm going to cover essentially the bare basics. So the bare basics of Spreadsheet Sync is once you create a custom report and the report is is built in whichever way matters to you, right? So we use these purchases by item and by vendor as the way of breaking it down. You can save this report. I'm going to save this. We can save it. I'm going to take it by month, by vendor or something like that. So I save the report, and then once the report has been saved, I can go and I can launch Spreadsheet Sync here where it says More Actions and click on Run Report and sync data in Excel. So there's a couple of steps that you have to take in order to install Spreadsheet Sync into your Excel. Okay, and I kind of walk through that in the video, so I won't walk through it here. But then while your Excel is open, you have to log in, right? So you're going to have to do the process of logging in into your QuickBooks Online inside your Excel. So I'm going to go through the login process with my multi-factor authentication. Okay, then I'm going to go into my file. Okay, and then once your Excel logs into Spreadsheet Sync, and you can actually click on Run Report, and then you can select the report. So this one was called, any of the reports that you create in here, they will show up, and then you pick your date range, and then you click on Run Report, and then any of the reports, when we go back into QuickBooks, any reports you save here, and sometimes you have to sort of refresh, but any reports that you save into here, it could be in a group or not in a group, it really doesn't matter. So any reports that you save in here, once you go into Spreadsheet Sync, you'll be able to pull the report in the spreadsheet as well with a single click. So if you need to do something in Excel, you need to do some sort of analysis, something that QuickBooks cannot do, and that's normal because QuickBooks is not Excel. QuickBooks will never be Excel. But if you need to automate running or pulling these reports into your spreadsheet, this is actually a great way to do it. So in Spreadsheet Sync, you can run, again, any report that's in your list, custom or standard. You can filter different things in the report. So depending on the report that you do, so let's say we'll pick a profit and loss or a balance sheet or something like that. So you have a lot of different options here on how you can create the report. You can also create a consolidated reports. So if you have at least one QuickBooks Online Advanced file and then a whole bunch of other QBO files, whether they're advanced or not, you can do multi-company reports. So once you create a consolidated group, so you have 2, 3, 4, 5 files, you can run either a P&L, a balance sheet, or a trial balance. And we'll just do all dates here. Let's do that. And click on Run Report. And then it will load the data from 2, 3, 4, I haven't reached the limit, a bunch of QuickBooks files, and it will build a P&L that's by company. So you get to see everything consolidated in Excel. So it's really, really awesome. And you can click on automatic refresh, and then basically every time you log into QuickBooks, you save this Excel file. Every time you log into this file that you save, it refreshes for you automatically. You can also add records or edit records in batch, and you can also sync and edit budgets, something that's really, really useful. Okay, so that's Spreadsheet Sync. And then the last piece I kind of want to go through here, there we go, is I just wanted to list out that beyond QuickBooks Online Plus and Advanced, there's a new edition of Intuit called Intuit Enterprise Suite, which is like QuickBooks Online Advanced, but for the mid-market, for those much larger companies. And there's a whole bunch of additional reports that you get. And I just wanted to have a slide with them, just in case you have a client or your company needs any of these reports. Just something to consider that you might need to look at into Enterprise Suite.